YouTube, what is up? It is your boy Infinity from Learn to Rogue, and today we are bringing you another tutorial, this time on the powerful theory crafting tool, SimulationCraft. So, for those of you wondering what SimulationCraft actually is, it is our most powerful theory crafting tool available to us. It is better than anything you could possibly find on the internet or any website, and it's better than anything in-game you're going to find. If you're watching the video, I'm going to go ahead and assume you've already downloaded the program, but if you haven't, just check the description below for a direct link to the download. Let's hop right in and take a look at the options. There are 5 tabs at the top. The plots and reforges we will not be looking at in this video. Let's go ahead and take a look at the global options. Now here you can change it to PTR. On some versions of SimulationCraft, FAPTR is available, and this one it is not. This is the most current version, so we have no choice but to leave it at live. The iterations are a very important part of the basic options. Depending upon how many iterations you do, that's how many times it's going to simulate. So if you do 250,000 iterations, it's going to do 250,000 combat simulations. The more you do, the more accurate it is, but it is going to take your computer longer to render those results, so keep that in mind. For the most part, you want world lag to stay as low. That's about 100 milliseconds, which is probably what you guys play at. So let's leave it there. The length of the fight will determine the results of your simulation, so keep that in mind. If you have a particular fight in mind that you know lasts 4 minutes or 5 minutes, just match that up. Most fights typically last about 4 to 6 minutes, so let's just leave it at 350 seconds. Do not vary the length of the fight unless you want to get inaccurate results, or you want to see what happens if fights last longer or shorter. For me, I don't. I only care about accurate results, so I'll go with 0%. Now, patchwork is what most of the fights we have are. Well, Traxian doesn't exist anymore. That was a fight that had no expertise or no hit, no dodge, and no parry. So let's go ahead and leave it on patchwork. The target boss should probably stay as raid boss unless you want to see what happens in the PvP environment, or you care about normal or heroic dungeon damage. I don't, so let's leave it at raid boss. Now, the target race is what the boss is going to be. So if you're a troll who has a racial to do more damage to a beast, and you're doing a beast boss, you can change that here. The number of enemies should stay at 1 unless you want to simulate AoE. In my case, I only care about single target damage, so the number of enemies should be 1. If you want to see how your gear stacks up in challenge mode, this will automatically lower the eye level of all of your gear to 463. I don't care about that, so I'm going to leave it disabled. I'm going to assume that everybody watching my videos has watched my other tutorials, so you are a perfect elite player. So let's go ahead and leave it like that. The number of threads that your computer has will determine the number of time that it actually takes for your computer to render those results. So the higher the better. I'm an American, so my armory region is US, and I only care about my active spec. So that's those basic options down. Let's take a look at the buffs and debuffs. I am a 25-man raider, and as you know, in a 25-man raid, you should have every buff and debuff. So for my particular simulation, I'm always going to have these checked. If you want to see what you do by yourself without the buffs, you can modify that here. If you're a 10-man that doesn't have a particular buff and you want to see how that's affecting you, you can change and modify that here. The scaling is also very, very important. As a rogue, I already know that agility is my best stat. There's no mystery there. So I don't really care about knowing how powerful that stat is. I already know it's my best. Hit and expertise are also incredibly important for a rogue. So again, I'm going to get the hit cap and expertise cap regardless of what the weights are. So I don't care about that. But I am curious to see how my crit, haste, and mastery stack up against each other. If I want to simulate and actually find out how powerful those stats are when compared to each other, this is the page that we click on. And we need to choose all 3 stats to compare against each other. Like I said, the plots and reforges we will not be looking at. So let's go ahead and take a look at the import. Hey, it automatically pulled up the battle.net armory for us, so let's go ahead and find our character. Okay, now you may be listed at the top here. If you are, you can just click that. I'm not. I've got to go ahead and search. Here I am, and it pulls me up. This is my battle.net armory page. Now from here, I can go ahead and click the import button, and that'll move us on to the next step. I could also, if I wanted to, import from RAR, which is another simulation tool that a lot of feral druids and things like that use. It's not used so much anymore, but if you still use it, hey, all the more power to you, and you can import that. The sample profiles are pretty important if you want to take a look at what another class can do that you don't have access to. So if you want to see what a Death Knight in Tier 16 Best in Slot can do as far as damage, this is where you do it. You can also look at other specs and different item levels, and you can do it for any class, any character, any spec. The history is going to be filled up as you do more and more character searches. Hey, I've already done Infinity, so let's pull it back up. Okay, there we are. Let's go ahead and import my character into the actual simulation tool, and it does it automatically for us. Now, if you notice, we went from the Import tab to the Simulate tab automatically, and it starts listing all the information in code form for what my character is and what he has. It says, hey, this is Infinity the Rogue, and I pull that information from battle.net. He's a level 90 troll. His professions are jewel crafting and leatherworking. And it goes on down the line with more and more information. It even says, hey, this is what I'm going to simulate before combat begins. I'm going to flask, I'm going to food, I'm going to apply poisons, I'm going to use a pre-pot, I'm going to stealth, and if I have these talents enabled, marked for death, I'm going to slice and dice. I don't have those talents enabled, so it's not going to do that, but if I did, it would. Okay, once battle begins, it is going to use a Vermin's Bite potion if it can. It's going to Bloodlust. It's going to start auto-attacking. It's going to use Preparation, Blood Flurry, Berserking, Arcane Torrent, if those talents and those ratios are enabled. Now, here you'll see Blade Flurry, okay? And it says if the active enemy is greater than or equal to 2, then put Blade Flurry up. Well, if you remember back on the main option page, I said the number of enemies was 1, which is not greater than or equal to 2, so it is not going to simulate that. If I wanted to see how much damage I could do with 2, 3, 4 characters or enemies to Blade Flurry, I could change that on the option tab and it would simulate that. Now, I know this page pretty intimately because I've done this hundreds of times, and I know that the logic here is pretty solid. Now, the logic is going to change depending upon what class and what character and what spec you put in. And if you feel like there's something you want to change or modify, if you want a killing spree at, say, 50 energy instead of 45, you can change that. If you want a Shadow Blades at a time that's greater than 5 or something, you can modify that. If you want to change the combo point generators, you can do that. If you're a rogue that does not use Eviscerate, then you can simply go to the combo point finishers, hover over Rupture, and delete that. And it won't use Rupture in its rotation. I do use Rupture, so I'm going to go ahead and leave that. So once you understand how the logic works, there are a bunch of other modifiers that you can find on the SimulationCraft page, like custom times, custom energy capping, different kinds of variables for positioning of bosses, things like that. But that's more complicated than just the basic 101s, so let's just go ahead and hit the Simulate button and see what happens. So what's actually happening here is it's simulating 10,000 times a 6-minute fight. And then after it's done doing that, it's going to go ahead and scale the crit, mastery, and haste against each other to see which of those stats is actually the most important for a rogue. The reason why this is so important is because that's impossible for me as a rogue to do without reforging hundreds and hundreds of times at the minimum. I also cannot go to a test dummy and do 10,000 6-minute parses. I simply don't have that kind of time in my life. So this tool has allowed me to do that almost instantly. And the first thing that pops up is it says, hey, we did 10,000 iterations for 350 seconds on a patchwork fight style. You did on average 488,000 damage, 757. You're a troll, rogue, etc., etc., etc. Now, here's where you're going to see the actual scale factors for the crit, haste, and mastery. Okay, it's gone ahead and stacked crit on a character and simulated it, stacked haste, it's stacked mastery, it's done every combination of reforging and stacking that you can possibly do, and it has found that if you stack haste, you're going to get a better value or a weight than if you stack crit or mastery, and the value is 6.46. So you know it's roughly, I don't know, 10 or 11% better than mastery, maybe 12% better than crit, and mastery is just slightly better than crit. So you would reforge into haste, then you would follow up with mastery, and you'd follow up with crit. Now, I've already done that, but let's say you were a character that was new and you hadn't done that. Once you have done that, you can come back in and rescale again and see if those values have changed. This is your priority list, and it's going to tell you what your most valuable and important tools are for your particular class. Well, it's saying that Killing Spree is my best ability, followed by Rupture and Eviscerate, Ambush, and Sinister Strike. These are things that I've already knew, but if you were new to a character and you wanted to see what buttons were actually the best to hit, well, this will tell you. This will also tell you what you'll be doing for a majority of the time. It will tell you how much damage you do and kind of the ramp up for how that damage is done. Here you're going to see all the information that you will find in a recount or a SCADA meter. It will tell you exactly what abilities you did, how many times you did them, the overall DPS that those abilities did, how long you spent doing them. The average crit and the average hit are often overlooked, but they should not be, because the simulator is doing it perfectly. It is doing the exact right number of eviscerates, the exact right number of combo points. Basically anything that your character can and should be doing, the simulator is going to do perfectly. It's not going to make those mistakes. So if it's ambushing on average for 162,000, then you need to be ambushing on average for 162,000. If its eviscerate on average is 221,000, then that's what yours should be. And if those numbers are not matching up, if you're not doing the correct average or critical strike, then you need to figure out why. Maybe you're not doing things properly with trinket procs, maybe you're not doing enough damage during the lust, maybe you need to pre-pot at a different time, but those numbers should add up. It's also going to show you the uptime for things like debuffs and buffs. So, for example, it's saying that you should have a 99% uptime for deadly poison. I would agree with that. Saying your revealing strike should be up about 99%. I would agree with that. And it's saying if you're using rupture, it could be up as high as 83%, and I would also agree with that. Now, if you go ahead and take a look at the actual buffs, it will show you the uptime for those buffs if you were doing it perfectly. So if Slice and Dice is a very important buff for a rogue, it should be up at least 99.6% of the time. If you want to see how much your trinkets are up or how much your actual procs are up for weapon enchants, it should show you here. You can see that information in SCADA and Recount, and they need to match. If they're not matching, you're doing something wrong. And so that's why this is such a valuable tool. It actually lets you know where you're making the mistakes. Down here you can see how much the resources were taken by different abilities and how much you were gained from the different abilities. And it will also give you some graph information. Now for a rogue, we get so much energy that it really doesn't matter, but if you were a feral druid, or maybe somebody who uses mana, this could be much more valuable for you. So that's pretty much it as far as the results go, you guys. It's pretty straightforward stuff. Once you use it a couple times, you'll get used to it. When it really becomes powerful is when you take a look at your character and you have questions, or you're curious about things like, hey, I see this ring. You've used an orange socket gem here and a blue socket, and you're not getting that socket bonus. Is that worth it? I don't know. Is it? Well, you could go ahead and go into the game and put a blue socket in and fill it up with agility hit, and you could come back in and resimulate, and it would give you the results. I've already done that, and I know for me personally that the agility haste is a better value than the hit socket bonus. Is this accuracy enchant actually the best? Or should I go with superior critical strike? These are the types of questions that a lot of people have that they don't have easy answers to. SimulationCraft gives you those answers in an easy format, and it can do it for you better than you could ever do it in game. So we're going to go over another video here maybe in the next week or so that kind of goes over how to find those answers and how to find the hidden damage that you didn't even know existed. But now you guys have a pretty good understanding of how SimulationCraft works, how it's useful, and what it can do for you. So I want to thank you guys for your time. Go ahead and hit that like button if you enjoyed the video. Hit that subscribe, and I'll see you next time, guys.